All of a sudden, 5 minutes later, my wallet appeared in a place that I know I had looked several times before, like maybe lying out on top of a sofa cushion. And it didn't make sense. And I connected the dots in my mind and I thought, he took my wallet. Hi, this is Mike Balaban. Welcome to another episode of BAMMER Tales. Today, I'd like to focus on the 1980s in New York, where I lived at the time. And the fact is that AIDS had taken over the land, the world, and people, particularly in the LGBT community, were dying in droves. For those of us who lived in New York, one of the epicenters for AIDS, we were petrified. We tended to pull within, to not be as social, to certainly not have as much sex, etc. One of the other ways we pulled in was a lot of us stopped going out to Fire Island because the risk factor was just too great and the association with death was too severe. So instead, what did we do? Well, I ended up getting together with two guys who worked out at my gym with me, and we looked for a share rental house out in the Hamptons, which is the exclusive, ritzy, suburban community 2 hours east of New York City, about 100 miles, 160 kilometers. It was mostly wealthy people and their homes and their cars, etc. But there were a number of us who were able to rent rooms in houses, a share like you would have in Fire Island. It wasn't as common in the Hamptons, but it existed. And so we found a second floor, 2-bedroom apartment above the ground floor home of a friend of mine. I got my own room. They shared the second room. It was mostly cocktail parties. There was only one gay bar called The Swamp, no longer in existence today, but it was the one place you could congregate in the evenings. Otherwise, you basically had barbecues, parties, cocktail receptions, charitable benefits at which you would see a lot of the other members of the gay community, or you could see them on the beach. Long Island has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, particularly the ones far east where the Hamptons are. And so every day or so during the summer, we'd go to Fowler Beach on Fowler Lane, which was roped off as kind of a gay area. And we'd play volleyball and we'd swim in the ocean and we'd towel hop from one towel to the other, schmoozing with and making new friends. And that was pretty much your existence in the Hamptons. We lived across the street from an old, beautiful renovated home that had been bought by two gay men who I began to get close to that summer. So much so that at the end of the summer, they asked me if I wanted to move into their house the following year and rent one of their rooms that was becoming available. And I did. And I ended up being with them for 11 straight summers after that. But on this first summer, I just met them. They invited us to come hang out by their pool. We did. And then we would go to the beach from there. And on this one day in particular, we went to their pool, we swam, we put on our oil, we got on our bicycles or we got rides from people who owned cars, and we rode 3 miles away to Fowler Beach. And once we got there, we did what I had described. And in our group that day, there was only one person that I didn't recognize and who was quite handsome to boot. I'm going to call him Joe. And Joe was an illustrator / artist, probably 28 to 30 years old, slender but defined musculature, handsome face, kind of a wavy Elvis Presley type hair for that era. We were flirting a little on the beach, or at least I thought we were. I wasn't sure. When the end of the day came, we all went back to the pool across the street and continued hanging out, and I continued flirting with Joe. And at that point, someone probably came up to me and said, Joe doesn't have a place to spend the night, and we don't have any more rooms or beds available here in our house. Unless he finds an invitation, he's going to have to drive 2 to 3 hours back to Brooklyn tonight. And I had a queen-size bed in my own room. So I went over and kind of reintroduced myself and told him I had understood his predicament. It was up to him. If he wanted to, he could stay in my queen-size bed. There was no strings attached to this invitation, but at least he would have a place to spend the night. He kindly said he would be happy to accept my offer. When the evening comes to an end, we go back to our 2-bedroom apartment, and Joe and I go into my 1-bedroom, and we begin turning down the bedding and getting ready, brushing your teeth and doing your ablutions. And as we climbed into bed together, something electric happened, and we kind of attacked each other aimlessly. And we began making out, which then led to sex, which lasted for an hour and a half. Who knows what time is like in those moments. But we had a rambunctious and rowdy time together. And if that were the way the weekend ended, it would have been a thrill in my memory bank. But the next day didn't quite go as well. We wake up the next morning, maybe 10 o'clock or so. We're kind of, again, brushing our teeth, getting dressed, etc. I think we decided to go to breakfast, maybe with some of the group across the street. And as we're preparing to leave, I go to put on my Bermuda shorts, and I reach in my pocket, and the wallet's missing. It's not there. And the heart goes in my throat. You know that feeling. And I immediately start looking at every place that I might have put it or where it might have slipped out of my pants. And I looked under cushions on the sofa. I looked behind things in case it fell down on a chest of drawers, and nowhere to be found. And when Joe saw what I was doing, he asked me, and I told him, and he began helping me look. And after searching all the obvious places at least 2 or 3 times, I was disconsolate and desolate. I was just depressed. And my mood changed. It was very hard for me to act like everything was fine and go on and be my normal jovial self. But all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, my wallet appeared in a place that I know I had looked several times before, like maybe lying out on top of a sofa cushion. And it didn't make sense. And I connected the dots in my mind, and I thought, he took my wallet. And I had only, hints that was the case. I had no proof. And I certainly wasn't going to accuse him. It probably became apparent just by the way my mood towards him changed. And for the rest of the morning and the short time we were together, I wasn't as warm, I wasn't as friendly, I wasn't as intimate. I mean, I tried to be matter of fact, but I couldn't trust him, or I didn't think I could. And that was it. That's the way it ended. I'll never know if he really took my wallet or not. My thought at the time was that I had become so depressed, and it was so obvious how important this was to me, that he felt guilty after taking the wallet, and then decided to try to get it out and put it in a place where I might discover it so that my mood would improve. But in fact, the reverse happened. It immediately made me suspicious. So that would be the end of the story, were it not for the fact that I received a couple of cards in the mail. Now, I don't know if I mentioned he was an artist, an illustrator. I received a card in the mail, which will appear on the screen now momentarily, a beach scene with a black guy with a ghetto blaster on his shoulder, a muscle guy walking down the beach, a honky-tonk kind of Jewish woman, presumably from the flaming red hair. And in the bottom of it is written in a little bubble, "Gee, I thought I found myself a new friend." Underlined, exclamation, exclamation. Then, sometime later, I got a second card, and this was at Christmas, New Year's. A picture of a painted wallet on the fold-up card. In the front of the card, the wallet, and if I had really stolen your wallet in red print, ... And then next you folded it up and read the inside, I probably would have spent more on this card. And there are holly and holly berries from Christmas next to it. Happy New Year, parenthesis, anyway, close parenthesis. Too bad for me. I really enjoyed your company. You can imagine how that made me feel. Like, was I wrong? Or did he really take my wallet? I'll never be able to go back and figure out the true answer or make amends if I was wrong. I can only share with you this somewhat embarrassing but true to life and very believable scenario that happened to me in the summer of 1986. How about you? Any similar stories? Let me hear from you. Mike Balaban, BAMMER Tales. Thanks.